Jeffrey Dahmer, a name that forever haunts American criminal history. Words like serial killer and cannibal are inseparable from him. But how did an ordinary boy from Wisconsin become one of the most notorious and brutal criminals in the world? Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born in 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His childhood appeared normal on the surface, but beneath it, he developed disturbing interests, secretly dissecting animals and experimenting with death in small ways. At school, he was lonely, withdrawn, and struggled to form meaningful connections. As he entered his teenage years, these dark curiosities began to intensify. What began as fascination eventually became a dangerous obsession, a desire to control, dominate, and ultimately possess. In 1978, at just 18 years old, Dahmer committed his first murder. The story began with a hitchhiker, a young man who disappeared without a trace. Dahmer later admitted to taking the boy's life. It was the first time his fantasies turned into reality. After this initial crime, he went through a period of apparent calm, but the urge to kill, to control, and to possess never truly left him. During the 1980s, Dahmer returned to Milwaukee and his killings became more systematic and organized. He lured young men to his apartment using alcohol and his manipulative charm. Once his victims were inside, he would overpower them, often by strangulation. But killing was only part of his obsession. He also preserved body parts, photographed his victims, and engaged in acts of cannibalism. His need for control had grown into a meticulous, horrifying ritual. For years, Dahmer operated undetected. 17 men would eventually fall victim to his crimes. His ability to blend into society, appearing as a quiet, harmless individual, allowed him to continue his acts while the world remained unaware. Everything changed in July 1991. One of Dahmer's intended victims, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape. He ran to the police and described in vivid detail the horrors he had witnessed, the imprisonment, the threats, and the attempted murder. Police immediately investigated Dahmer's apartment. What they discovered was a nightmare beyond comprehension. Inside the apartment, authorities found dismembered remains, human body parts stored in containers, and a range of grotesque items meticulously catalogued by Dahmer. The evidence was shocking, chilling, and indisputable. The world could hardly believe what was revealed. Following his arrest, Dahmer was put on trial in 1992. The courtroom proceedings were surreal. Dahmer, calm and composed, recounted his crimes with chilling clarity. Each word seemed to reflect not only a lack of remorse but a calculated, methodical mind. The jury listened in disbelief as he described the murders, the preservation of body parts, and the acts that horrified a nation. He was ultimately sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, totaling 957 years in prison. In prison, Dahmer remained a target. In November 1994, he was beaten to death by a fellow inmate, ending his life but leaving behind a legacy of terror and fascination. His story remains one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history. Jeffrey Dahmer's case is not only about the horror of his actions, but also about the dark depths of the human psyche. How could someone commit such acts over years methodically and without detection? How could a society fail to notice the warning signs until it was too late? The victims of Jeffrey Dahmer deserve to be remembered. Their stories remind us that evil often hides behind ordinary appearances, and that reality can sometimes be far darker than any imagination. The questions linger. How could the signs have been missed? Why did it take so long to uncover the truth? And what does this say about the thin line between normalcy and monstrosity? The name Jeffrey Dahmer will forever be etched in history, a chilling reminder that sometimes the monsters are real and they walk among us unnoticed.